Hello friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start our video with another story about a mailbox and a kid in a brand new BMW. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Kid wrecks his brand new car and tries to sue my grandfather. My grandfather's house is on the backside of a high school complex, and both kids and parents are always flying up and down the road to and from the school. Every couple months or so, for about a year, people would drive by and either brick his mailbox or flat out run over it. It was not a very high sidewalk, so it wasn't particularly hard for them to do so. Well, my grandfather finally had enough, so he put up a normal tin mailbox and a metal pole in hopes it wouldn't get damaged again. This thing was built pretty sturdy. He didn't dress it up or anything, it was still a normal mailbox. It had one purpose, which was to stay in one piece. One day, a kid was driving his brand new BMW down the road, and I'm not entirely sure if he lost control or purposely hit the mailbox, but when my grandfather came outside to see what had happened, the kid's car was destroyed. Edit. It did tear up the concrete, which the family was required to repair, but overall the mailbox received minimal damage. The kid was walking around in a panic because he knew his family was going to kill him. About half an hour later, his father shows up. The guy starts yelling and screaming about how my grandfather could have killed his kid and you built this mailbox so it would purposely hurt my child. He goes on and on about this and threatens to sue my grandfather for the damages. Little does he know that my grandfather is a police officer. My grandfather states that he has no obligation to fix his son's car. If he hadn't hit the mailbox, he would have been paying the city for a new police cruiser that was parked in the driveway. Eventually, the father realized he wasn't going to get any compensation, and they called a tow truck and left. My grandfather's never heard nor seen from this family again. Fast forward to now, I'm in college and visit them often. My grandfather's retired and enjoying life and has told me interesting life experiences he's had over the years, this being one of them. The mailbox is still there to this day. And our second story. My neighbors hate me for the most ridiculous reason. So I bought this place almost 2 years ago now, moved in, and the one neighbor was kind of nosy and weird. She mentioned loving what we did with the basement. Wait, what? How do you know what my basement looks like? But not horrible overall. Fast forward 1 year, and I start building a fence around the rear of my property since it's not enclosed, and I'd like some privacy from the roadway. The only street access to my property is at the rear, the front is a field, and my neighbor comes out and hands me a copy of the My Province Line Fence Act, which states that if one property owner builds a fence that encloses his property and benefits from an existing fence on the property line between the two, that he needs to pay for half of the existing fence the neighbor built. He then tells me that they like us and would like to keep it that way, so he's asking in the nicest way possible that I pay for half of his $10,000 fence. I simply tuck the paper in my pocket and tell him I'll go over it later. I get back to work building my fence. A few hours into the build, my other normal neighbor comes by and says that her crazy neighbor mentioned that I had a concern about their normal guy's fence being too far on my property to her. I told them I haven't even talked to her in any way and that she's obviously just trying to stir up drama. She also gave them a copy of the Not Applicable Line Fence Act and suggested they demand I pay them for half of their fence as well. They politely declined and asked if I wanted to attach my fence to theirs, which I did, and we shared some building materials for some projects we had going on at the time. Now back to their ludicrous demand. There are a few obvious and some less obvious things wrong with this completely ridiculous request. His fence was built before I even moved here. I have no idea if the previous owner of my house paid for half or not. He claims they didn't. This act only applies to fences on the property line. He built his 6 inches in from the property line because the previous owner of my house didn't want to pitch in for half. How this benefits anyone but me by making my property appear larger is a total mystery to me. Is bad. The Line Fence Act only applies to property containing livestock. The entire thing is moot. A few days go by and his wife drops what is basically an invoice on my front step. I laugh and throw it away. Another few days go by and they begin harassing my wife, saying how we're benefiting from their fence, which they paid for, and that we need to do the right thing and pay for it. Hell no. Things quiet down for a few months, although I can tell the man living there is extremely sour about the whole thing, regardless of how little it actually has to do with me. He'll no longer talk to me or acknowledge me in any way. I still give him the occasional nod and say hi and stuff when I run into him, and he just glares. His wife is still very nosy and acts friendly, but I can tell she's just trying to make me feel awkward or to pry for information. I'm never rude, just short replies and don't engage in small talk. Now, out of nowhere, they're threatening my wife that they're going to set their pit bull loose on my cat and see what happens. And just today, the woman privately told my 7-year-old daughter that she'd better keep her cat inside because next time she sees it, she's going to trap her in a cage and send her to the pound. She cried for hours. She also mentioned something about how I'm all over the internet and an embarrassment to my family. I'm pretty sure she saw my local Facebook rant and rave comment telling the whole story of how petty and sad they are over this whole thing on a post where someone was asking about a similar situation regarding fence cost sharing and whether their neighbor could force them to pay for it, etc. This is way over the line. I don't care what you do or say to me, but leave my GD children alone. I'm beyond PO'd right now, but I know reacting is not going to help anything in the long term. I don't want to be petty like them, but I want to do something to let them know this will not continue. One thing I definitely want to do in the near future is build my own fence along the property line just so I can actually enclose my yard with gates on the sides of the house since I obviously can't attach anything to his fence. Might be a little difficult to do this so close to his without damaging it at all, and I'll have to look into the legalities of this, but I don't think it should be a major issue. And our last story. Karen tries to withhold benefits and doesn't like the consequences. I used to have a veteran's disability pension for a hearing defect. It's now merged with my state pension. It was small and back home was paid annually. However, I moved to the UK and this pension was still paid by my government, but now administered by the UK DWP, Department of Work and Pensions, who paid it fortnightly. Some years ago, I was entitled to a disability allowance because of various issues. At the time, I was diagnosed with diabetes, but was trying to control it with diet. So I got called into the local job center for an interview. Unfortunately, I had Karen for an interviewer. I'm on the spectrum, but I'm high functioning. That means that I don't suffer fools gladly and can be very rules bound. Firstly, she questions why I hadn't declared the VDP as part of my earnings. I had, but it was in another part of the form. Then she said that I couldn't have diabetes because I wasn't taking any medicine, and as I was telling Porky, she would not allow my claim. Now the DA claim had nothing to do with my diabetes. However, she was stupid to put it in her letter of rejection that I hadn't diabetes because I wasn't taking any medicine for it. She also said that they would no longer pay my VDP. I sent a copy of the letter to my high commission who said, "Don't worry, they deal with it." I handed a copy of the letter to my doctor who was incensed. She complained to the DWP asking about Karen's medical qualifications, so I got asked to have another interview about 1 p.m. on a certain day with the Karen. I said that I couldn't guarantee to attend on that day as I had another appointment that morning. The message back from the Karen was if I didn't attend, my claim would be refused. So going with the flow, I said that I would try to attend, but I might be a little late. So I have my morning appointment, go home, change, and toddle off to the job center. I get there on the dot of 1 p.m., only to find that the Karen had booked an interview room on the first floor instead of the ground floor. There's no lift. To cut a long story short, it took me nearly 15 minutes to haul my sorry butt up those stairs, in the end being helped by this guy in a suit who asked why I was trying to get to the first floor. I told him that I had an interview and that the Karen who was seeing me chose the room. So I get to the room and Karen says, "You're late. I'm refusing your claim unless you have a very good reason." So I said to her, "Well, my day has been interesting. You were warned that I had an appointment this morning, and because of it, I might be late." Karen: "I want you to tell me about this appointment and exactly what happened to make you late." Me: "I turned up at the appointment this morning, took my clothes off, and then had 2 nice young ladies slather me with lube. Then they got me to lay down on my side facing the wall, and one of them proceeded to stick her fingers in my butt." Karen: "How dare you talk such filth in front of me? Your case is closed." Suit, who was listening out of sight: "Excuse me, Karen, but you did ask him to tell you about his appointment and exactly what happened to make him late." Suit to me: "How did your prostate examination go?" Me: "More tests, unfortunately." Suit: And was that the reason you were late? Me. No, the stupid bee was being vindictive and interviewed me on this floor instead of the ground floor. She knew my claim was because I had breathing problems and couldn't climb stairs. I think she would have claimed that as I made it to the first floor, I was lying and refused the claim. Suit. I think you're right. Suit to Karen. You'll approve his DLA claim as I had to help him up the stairs, and based on my observations, he qualifies. And you and your manager will report to me tomorrow at 9 a.m. in my office to explain your actions. If you're late, you'll be terminated. Karen, very white-faced. Yes, sir. Turns out he was an area director that the DWP had sent in to investigate the high level of complaints about that job center. It also turns out that a complaint from a high commissioner about a breaching an international agreement is a big deal for the DWP. Who knew? Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.